just wanted to do a quick video today on making collage papers that look like old letters. This is something I've been like really sort of just enamored with lately. I know you can buy them online as well. I do have some I've downloaded from Etsy and they're going to be printed out. So maybe I'll do another video talking about that. But it's also fun to make your own. They're in, the shading you want, the color you want, and it's just really fun to experiment with that. So I'm going to make two. I'm going to start with two sheets of basically, this is, I say, so-called watercolor paper. It just came, I can't remember what I bought, but it just came like as a little bonus. And if I could find the front of it, see, it says watercolor paper pad. No hot press, cold press, grams per square meter or pounds per, what is it, square foot? I can't remember. But anyway, there's no indication. And honestly, it isn't great quality paper to begin with. I don't mind that. I don't want something too thick. I've used paper that was really thick. Actually, I've used books as collage paper, and that's another thing I could talk about in another video if you guys want to hear about that. But sometimes when the paper is too thick, it's an issue, and I'm almost wondering if this isn't going to be too thick because it does have a certain thickness. I'm starting to wonder if I shouldn't use a page from my sketchbook. So actually, I'm rethinking that. Sorry about that. We sometimes have these last minute changes of heart. As I said, I used a technical, I got this secondhand. It's a technical book on pottery making, and I've been using the pages as collage. They're beautiful. They have diagrams as well as the writing, but at the same time, I realized they are extremely thick and caused me some issues when I was using them as collage. So this is sketchbook paper. This is actually a sketchbook that I got recently. The paper is quite thin. I wouldn't use it for watercolor. I wouldn't use it for acrylic. I've been fiddling with pastels in it, practicing flowers. I think I'm going to dedicate that whole sketchbook to flowers, but so far, maybe not. The only disadvantage of thinner paper like this is it might buckle a bit, but that won't be an issue by the time we collage it, because with our medium, it's just going to get relatively wet, humid again. So it'll flatten out, and I rarely use the whole sheet. I tend to tear up my collage or to tear the edges. I don't like when you look and see a really straight edge somewhere. Sort of, that idea like you can't really tell, and it brings you in a little bit closer because you're sort of wondering what's going on. So I like to start by just giving a bit of background color. Now we want them to look like old letters, so I'm thinking maybe a yellowy browny color. I'm probably going to start with just some really boring pale yellow I have here. This is acrylic, and I tend to just throw it on and just spread it out and see what happens. It's quite dark. It's actually darker than what I had expected, so I'm going to transfer some of it over here and use a little bit of water to just thin it out. I'm not really going to worry about that too much. And as I said, this is probably going to be all pretty much cut up or torn up by the time it makes it onto a canvas, if it does, whoops, make it onto a canvas. And I'm not really going to worry about background either, okay? This is really not the idea of it having to look perfect. We just don't want a super white blank page, against a super white blank canvas somewhere down the line. So you know what, that's just good enough for me, and it just goes to the faded, worn look of the paper. Okay, what do we do with this? No worries. And like I said, I'm really tough with my collage paper. They usually wind up torn up into really little pieces, or at least not straight square pieces. And again, I'm not really going to worry about this. I could start over if you don't like it. Just start over, but I tend, like I said, not to worry about it too much. Whoops. Just dripping off the edge of the paper onto my pants. I am an extremely messy painter. I sometimes look at videos of people painting and they're wearing a nice little smock over their clothes. No, I wear complete paint clothes. You can tell this is like an old polar fleece jacket. I have something lighter in the summer when it's a little warmer. There, not really going to worry about that too much either. And once it's covered over, like I said, it's just going to go to the distressed look of the paper. And anyway, this is usually so hidden. Some of it, barely any of it could be showing through on the final painting. Maybe none of it will even be showing through on the final painting. Joy of acrylic as it dries super fast. Some faster than others. Just slide that over here. Give them a break. I also just use a piece of cardboard as my backing. You don't even have to. You can be working directly on your table on a piece of plastic. You can get a piece of plexiglass, if that's your thing. And I'm just going to put down some writing. I could do that myself. This is, whoops, sorry about that, if it jerked. These are stencils I got. I really liked these. You cannot make out what it says, which is really cool. Funny story. I used a book, again, used book, and it was a small little paperback. It was written in, I'm going to say Asian writing. I can't even tell. I couldn't even tell if it was, Chinese, Japanese. I think it turned out to be Mandarin. Anyway, for some reason, I thought it was poetry. It had an image of a woman looking pensive on the cover. And as I began to use it, I used it once. A newspaper article fell out of it, and it was about menopause. And then I began to wonder, and of course, I couldn't. Maybe there's a way to Google the Asian writing. I couldn't, but then I noticed, silly me, no better next time. It was written in our letters, and I'm sorry, I'm looking for the name of our alphabet. Anyway, so I Googled those words, and effectively this book was all about menopause. So if you are buying used books as collage and you're thinking this writing looks really nice, it's Arabic, it's Asian, it's, I believe, Laotian is very, very pretty. Also, just beware of what it says. Even if you're using something, in English or French or, Spanish, like something you can recognize, just always beware of the message that's there, especially if it shows through, unless that's your intention, of course, with, what you're putting forth in your art. But anyway, getting back to this, I just really liked it. Different styles. This is on Amazon. It's easy to find, and I don't even remember. I'll try to link it if I remember, but like I said, it's pretty easy to find. The writing is different styles, but you still cannot recognize what it is. So, that's what I like about it. Lesson learned. Not always a good idea. But it was kind of funny. It was sort of like, oh no. And, silly me, like I thought it was poetry. Go figure. So choosing one of these, I think I'm going to start with this one because I really like it. It comes in a set of 4 stencils, and just in case this isn't hard to find, like I said, these ones like French signs, Parfum de Fleurs, Parisienne, Perfume, and Chateau Ville de Paris. I've used these designs. This you can use too, really, cool, depending what you want to do about that. So I'm just going to put this over here. I'm not really going to worry. Again, is it lined up, perfectly? I don't really want it going sideways. I might collage it sideways, but I don't really want it going sideways. And I'm going to do this in a sort of blue ink. So I have a dark blue acrylic. I'm just going to close these. And you can do this wash. You know, I did it in acrylic. You can do it in watercolor as well. Entirely up to you. So this is just like like I said, a primary blue that's been mixed with black. And it has an inky dark color. I often get asked, do you have a lot of paint? I don't think I really do. I think you should have the colors you use. I definitely wouldn't suggest you go and buy a whole, immense range of, 30, 40 colors. And the rest I just mix as I go along, depending on what I'm doing. So this is a mix. This is just theoretically you could just have red, yellow, blue, black, and white and mix most of your colors. The other thing I don't want when I do this is for this to all be really, really even. I want it, again, to have that faded look as well. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that paint in the bottom of, this is an old yogurt container. And this is a makeup sponge, dollar store. Again, I know there are sponge tipped applicators you can use. By all means, if you're really doing a lot of stencil, you can consider buying them. I would as well. I just started doing this recently and I liked it so much, so I might actually consider buying those. But so far, I've just been using the makeup sponge. I usually rummage around, and just find what I need in my studio and use that. And I'm actually going to tape this down because it is going to move and then I'm going to be really annoyed with myself. So I'm just going to use some really... And you're, going to see that's usually my approach is, experiment, try. If you like it, invest in the sponge tipped applicators, invest in a bunch of stencils based on what you like. Extend your supply line depending on what you enjoy doing. I'm just going to rub some of this off here because I don't want it too dark, as I said. And when it gets too dark, it smushes under the stencil, under the punch outs in the stencil. And what happens is you wind up just with mush. You cannot see the drawing, you just see mush. And I'm going to go really lightly down here. Again, I want to have that faded look. So it's sort of fading in and out. It's worn. It's an old letter. It's maybe been sitting in some trunk in an attic for ages. Maybe it's gotten damp. It's gotten wet. It was written in ink. So who knows? That can be very splotchy, very uneven. I'm going to do this just really lightly with what I have left here. There, and don't even have to fill it all in. Sometimes you can do it even more faded so it looks like, you've completely lost some of the writing. And I'm always just curious to see if it looks okay. So let me peel this back. Yeah, excellent. That's pretty much what I want. A little too much, when I was saying little too much paint here, that's okay. It looks like maybe there was just a little too much ink on the pen and it tended to run a little bit more than it should have. So that's okay. I like it like that. Again, we have the faded idea of the paper as well. And just what I like to do also is take a little bit of this blue again, add a little bit of water, and I'm just going to, whoops, a little bit of ink fell there. So maybe writing quickly, maybe hastily, and we got some drops of ink that fell onto the paper. So that's another thing I like to do. Sort of looks like I'm going to try to do just one larger drop. Oh, perfect. Right here, and kind of messy sometimes. I just watched the movie Marie Antoinette, the one directed by Sofia Coppola, and with Kirsten Dunst. I'm not saying her name right, but when she signs her name on the marriage license or the church records, Louise signs very nicely, and she literally, scratches hers like she hasn't had a lot of practice writing, and there's a big splotch of ink afterwards. So it happens even on the most important of documents. This is also XDT Art Supplies, also came in a set just because I wanted something a little longer that looked a little bit like a rigger brush. And I'm just going to see what this does. Okay, so we have a few little drops here. There. So that's our messy, I don't know. I shouldn't say messy, right? Who knows what I would do if I had to write with ink and a pen or ink and a quill. Might not be very impressive either. Dried this, obviously, it's going to bend and wrinkle. No worries. Let's use, I haven't used this one yet. Oh, excellent. Let's use this one. And I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to use a sort of brownish rust-colored ink. I think ink came in many colors back in the day. Obviously black, dark blue. But I think it also came in a brownish rust color. So, okay, so I sort of have a rusty brown color. Use my, oh yeah, I like that. Not 100% sure ink came in this color, but I somehow think it did. You just peel it off gently. I'm just going to check what it looks like. Yeah, good enough for me. You see, I usually take notes on these too as I go along. I sometimes take notes in my sketchbook, but a little less diluted, the paint would be the only thing I would have to remind myself for next time, because here it's splotched. As I said, in a collage, probably won't even show, but learning as we go along. I would take a note and say, just make sure it's not too diluted next time. But again, collage disappears. It might not even be seen in the final product. So, who knows? But if you do this on more solid paper, like watercolor paper, and this is just coming to mind as I'm talking, and you make sure maybe do like a practice piece to make sure your paint is the right consistency, and you do it on a square of watercolor paper or on a square of cardstock or watercolor card paper. That would make a really nice card as well, obviously to write a note, and you have like this old style writing on the front of your card. So maybe we can try to do that in another video. If that's something you want to see, let me know, and we'll make some cards with this writing on the front. Now, would I do a few drops of ink on this one? I think so. So no more than that. And like I said, you don't want to fuss too much on this because it might not even show up in the final product. If you were doing it like to put on cards, we might fuss a little more. We might, well, obviously we're going to fuss more. We want it to look nicer because it's going to completely show. And might do these. We might want to do some ink splotches. We might not want to. The other thing you can do, and I'm just going to grab back this guy. This is still drying as well. But, if you want to do like a ring from a glass, perhaps, the person has put their glass down. Maybe they were drinking tea, they were drinking a coffee, maybe they were drinking some red wine. So I just want to make, like I said, a circle. And this, people, is pretty much the way I work. I could do a practice run and have everything close to hand and be just pulling it out, but this is actually what happens. I look for something. I'm still intrigued where those plastic cups are. But anyway, this is, I think this is like an old applesauce container. I've actually gotten rid of some and put them in the recycling because I tend to have a lot. Then I mixed up sort of a color that looks like a Beaujolais to me. No, just kidding. It looks like wine color. Okay. I don't know what it is. For some reason, I'm thinking, oh, maybe because I showed you the stencils that said Paris, I'm thinking, Beaujolais or Burgundy. Probably I have more France on the brain, but I am more partial to Italian wines for the little bit of. And this, again, like I said, I've done this before. I don't remember if I did it exactly like this. Want something with enough of a rim so it shows, maybe not too even either, because, some wine dripped out of the glass. I'm starting to think whoever wrote this had too much wine to drink. A bit of wine drips out the glass, runs down the stem, and goes around the foot of the glass. Is that it? The foot of the glass? But not necessarily evenly everywhere, right? So, and maybe, while writing his letter, gets up to think or something and puts the glass down. If he's left-handed like me, it's going to be there, but maybe just puts it off. Maybe we won't even do it evenly, right? Just puts it off to the side here. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, that's nice. There, and makes a great big horrendous stain. Not perfectly even, like we said, but seems to be sloshing a lot of wine around this guy. Ooh. Why do I say this guy? Who knows? He's going to say that's not fair. Let me just wipe this off a little bit with my rag from before. And I don't know, are we going to stick with the wine theme, or are we going to go maybe for a coffee theme? Drinking a cup of coffee. After drinking too much wine, he's on to the coffee and writing another letter. Just a fun fact before I wrap this up, I was reading actually a book I read a while back, but it takes place in France. It starts in the 1400s in France, and this person is very fortunate in that they know how to write. It actually saves their life because they're not executed, because they know how to write, and they're useful to, I think, the jailer who decides to somehow commute their sentence. Anyway, and what I didn't realize is at the time, depending on the little story here while we're painting, depending on who you were writing to, so what the nature of your letter was it a love note? Was it to someone familiar? Were you writing to a family member? Were you writing an official letter to request something from an official of some sort? You varied style and size of font, and you varied nib of pen. So I can't remember exactly if they specified, but for example, and I'm just putting this out there because as I said, I can't remember, but if you were writing to an official of some sort, it might be very thin lines and very, flourishing style. And if you were writing to a family member, might not worry about being as, calligraphy fancy as much, and you would just, scribble it out maybe with a wider nib. But there was a whole protocol, and I hadn't realized that. So other sort of fun fact, I'm just going to make this a little bit darker, and this is just how I work. Like I said, just fiddling with the colors, fiddling to get what I want. So this is sort of a browny blacky color, and I think this guy just completely put it down and walked away to the window and completely forgot. So where do I want to do this? Oh, here. There, let's just go for it here, and smooshed it around, picked it up. There, perfect again. Perfect in its non-perfection. So I'm just going to let these dry because my splotches are not completely dry yet. And as I said, when I use this, I usually tear it up anyway because I don't like the straight edges. And sometimes depending on how big the project you're working on is, even if you did use this as a card or just framing with other ideas, you might use just a small piece of it. Maybe, you'll get a stencil of stamps. Maybe you'll go online and order some old stamps and, use that in a sort of collage theme. And as I said, use to frame, just, use for fun, for practice, use for a card. So Leave me your comments if you have any comments. If you want to see this done a little bit better, maybe something we can put, as I said, on a card, let me know, and I'll try to do that video for you. So guys, that's it for this one. Thank you for watching. Happy painting, and I'll see you in the next one.